All right, welcome everybody to the ContraBIM live stream. Thank you so much for being here today. Today we are celebrating the 10,000 subscriber mark. So thank you to everyone out there who's supported this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, then thank you in advance for helping us reach the next milestone of who knows, maybe we can get to 20,000. So first off, let's just start by making sure that you can hear me. Hit up the chat, let us know where you're viewing from, and let's just make sure that my sound is coming through as I'm anticipating it to. And yeah, hopefully, well, I'm sure we have a little bit of delay here on the chat from what I'm showing, but yeah, let's keep rolling right along. So today's topic is really, I wanted to come back and revisit one of these subjects here. That's really the most popular video that we ever put out. And that subject is on how to work with SketchUp models inside Archicad. Now, the video that we put out, it was back in, I guess, 2018 here. It was all about using a free online resource, which was CAD Mapper, and is how to export out a SketchUp file from CAD Mapper and bring that into Archicad and then build a 3D city within Archicad using that here. So today's subject, we're going to be kind of revisiting this whole workflow of bringing SketchUp into Archicad and working with it on like a kind of the opposite end of the spectrum here. So we're going to be working on a residential project today and talking through how to bring this SketchUp file format into Archicad and then work with it by kind of slicing it up so that we can create floor plans and useful views so that we can then build a project within Archicad using Archicad elements based off this SketchUp reference. So, all right, I see a few comments coming in here. I was kind of looking to the side here to make sure that we were getting some comments. So it sounds like people can hear me. I can't see anyone complaining about the noise or the sound. So I see we have JK Mobile from Algeria, Robert Toy from Somerset in the UK. Thank you, Camille, for confirming that the sound is great, and yeah, greetings from Poland. So thanks for joining us. And okay, so yeah, let's keep moving along here and talk a little bit more about just what we are looking at here on the screen. So so this is actually one single SketchUp project file that I brought in and that we're working with here. This is actually with a client. Shout out to Kelly Morgan Architects from Napa, California. They are producing really awesome SketchUp projects, and we're kind of working through and transitioning from a SketchUp workflow over into the Archicad based workflow. And so yeah, shout out to them. Some of these SketchUp objects or models that they're producing are really top notch in terms of what I've seen. And so yeah, that's what we're going to be using as a subject here today. Now, to talk about kind of big picture, how to work with SketchUp objects, really how I like setting these up and controlling visibility. There's really two methods that I'm using to control visibility. One is obviously the layers. So I have this set here to a specific layer that's just set up for objects and SketchUp. So anytime I bring in either a project, an entire project like this, I'll assign it to that SketchUp layer. Or if I want to bring in other SketchUp objects, I can assign that to it as well. Or I, of course, could always assign other SketchUp objects to a specific layer if that's a little bit more purposeful if I wanted to. So yeah, that's kind of the first thing here is we have one layer that's assigned to SketchUp objects, and so that we can bring that in. Now with that layer, we actually have a layer combination set up here for just object modeling, and so that's really showing the the SketchUp objects in this case, as well as I have another workflow for kind of building objects on a few select layers. So this is all about kind of displaying just the objects that we wanted to show here. So that's really the first method for controlling the visibility of the SketchUp object. The other method here that I want to kind of jump over to right now is actually by using the renovation filter. So one thing that I'm going to do here, just kind of to temporarily show how I'm using this, is we can grab this entire SketchUp object here, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch over to like a design option 3. This is actually the third version of the SketchUp model I've brought in, and I'm actually going to pin this to that design option 3. And so what this allows us to do now is we can actually filter through and we can see what our design option 1 was. So this was the original version of the SketchUp model that we brought through. You can see that it doesn't have all the textures. It's not quite as large of a project. The detail isn't quite as much there. We can switch over, but I'll just point out that this is currently being pinned to that design option 1. So we can switch over to a design option 2. This was the second iteration of this SketchUp model. And what's great about this is we can kind of just filter through and flip through these different versions. So you can see that this is the second version, has a lot more detail. We now have textures added into the project file, and or into the SketchUp model, I should say. And so that would be the second version. The third version we were just looking at there. And so we'll flip this over one more time, and we'll see that you may have noticed there the roofs were raised. It looks like they kind of modified the looks like a barbecue area right here. And so yeah, this is just the next iteration. And by using these the renovation filters for this, it just makes it really easy to flip back and forth to compare two different versions. I like using the main version of the SketchUp object set to just my plan status, or to the new status. Actually, we could set it to any of them, but I'm going to unpin this now, so it's not part of that design option 3, and we go back to our plan status and it will be visible there. And what's also great with this is we can take the two and we can compare them. So we can turn on like our design option 2 and we can see the difference between these two at the same time. So you'll notice here that there's actually two of them overlaid. Let me grab the one that's the design option. Try to get a little clarity on this view. And one of the things that we can do with our surfaces, we can go in and we can actually override this. So we can make this, I don't know, like a glass yellow. And so this will give us even a better perspective on the differences between those two when I toggle that. And okay, so there we go. Now we can see that we've overridden one of the SketchUp models, and we can compare one version versus the next, and we can always flip back and forth here. So so that is, almost even more important of a workflow method here than even using the layers, using the renovation filters here for being able to store and archive different versions of the model, and always being able to bring them back and work with them. So okay, so let's go back to kind of our base plan status here, and let's talk a little bit about just kind of the default settings on this object. Now if you'll zoom in, you'll actually see that we do have a contour line turned on. If I switch over to just like a different 3D style, you can see that turns off all the contours. We can switch back to a contour pen, and you can see that everything right now it all has the same contour pen. So if we jump over here to a floor plan view, you can actually see that, yeah, there's our SketchUp object. Let's zoom out here a little bit. I know that there's a few nodes here based on this object that I always go to. So I always kind of default by searching for this node over on the corner, just because I know where it is. One of the things that can be a little frustrating with trying to select these SketchUp objects in 2D is you can't do it right from on top of it. Even though we can see the object here, we cannot select it here. So it's good to kind of have a reference here for where you want to place it. Often I will add a hotspot right on top of it here. So And one thing that you'll notice, or certainly that I'm noticing right now, is my computer is slowing down big time when I'm trying to view this here in 2D. So we're going to talk a lot about that here today, how to kind of work with this so that it's much faster to build, your own model within Archicad by referencing in this SketchUp object. But I do want to just kind of point that out, as my computer is definitely slowing down. But back to that one note here, I do like adding hotspots right on top of some of these points, so that way I can go and kind of toggle through, and certainly when I'm on my object tool, I can easily select the object just by kind of looking for those hotspots. So those can be pretty useful as well. So, all right, let's actually select our object here. And let's go into our floor plan and sections and just kind of look at what we have to work with here. So right now we currently have this just set to our home story, which is our ground level in this case. You can see our symbol line pen. So if we wanted to darken this up, that might make it a little bit easier for you to see here as we're kind of zooming in here. And you'll notice here, all we have turned on really is just the SketchUp object. We have our sections and elevations, and we also have our grid lines. But the content itself that we're actually looking at here, this is a top view down of the object, and which can be somewhat limiting. So right now we can't currently see any of the interior walls. We can see the site, we can see the roof elements, we can see some of the elements out here on the patio. But we can't see anything with, inside of this SketchUp object. So that's a major limitation of working with this in a floor plan view. And so I've definitely come up with some different techniques here that will allow us to start slicing up models or slicing up views of the SketchUp object and making it so that it's possible to dive in and start seeing the floor plan. So we'll kind of fast forward here for a second and just kind of show you what that looks like here. So if I open up this view, you can see that this is actually a worksheet view, but you can see here that we're actually cutting right through the model, and we are able to snap to all these elements. These are all lines. And so this really gives us the opportunity to not only view the cut through the model, but it also becomes much faster and easier to work with, so you can trace and reference it in to your actual working views. So okay, so that's kind of like the big picture of what I wanted to cover today. We'll walk through the steps of how we actually create these views here in just a few minutes, but I did want to kind of back up a little bit and kind of, for those who may be brand new to working with SketchUp objects within Archicad, I did want to just kind of quickly cover that import process here. So I'm actually going to jump over to a browser here, and on the 3D warehouse, the 3dwarehouse.sketchup.com, let's just actually search here real quick for like a greenhouse. And maybe we'll add just like a small little greenhouse model to the project. So let's find one that's kind of simple, and this one actually looks pretty good, pretty simple, low polygon count, very small size. So when we download this from the SketchUp warehouse, we do always need to use 2019 as the version. So 2019 is the latest version that we can actually import. So that's the version that we will download here, and I'll just kind of grab this from my folder. I have this pulled up on my other screen. I'm actually going to take this SketchUp object and I'm going to drag and drop it just right onto my view here. And so you can see that once we do that, we'll get this little preview here of where we are placing it. So with this greenhouse, maybe we'll just kind of place it within our working view area. Maybe we'll just kind of place it right over here and put it on the hill. And it'll take just a second for it to convert. I wanted to use a small object or a small SketchUp model for this instead of the big one, because this does take a little bit of time to import. But yeah, you can see we have some nice clean nodes here. We can take this, we can rotate and kind of snap this to the screen. I can feel that my computer is definitely slowing down a little bit right now, but that's okay. We'll talk about how to speed things up here in a minute. So, okay, so let's just snap that there. So now we have this greenhouse. One thing that we can do is I'm going to actually bring this over a little bit, and we can kind of snug it up against the house maybe. And what I'm looking for here is I want to be able to check out this section that we have and cut right through and see where that is in elevation, and then we can adjust it always in the elevation view. So, okay, so this is our section 7. I'm just going to jump over to my sections here, and we are going to pull this up, and then we will make some adjustments. So, okay, so there we are. We can see our main project, you know, the house. We can see our SketchUp object that we just brought in, and we can just take this and we can kind of, you know, snug it down here. And that's probably a good location for it in terms of where this is sitting in elevation there. So, okay, so that would be, you know, just how you can import SketchUp objects. The big project file that we're looking at here gets imported in the exact same manner. Yeah, once it's imported, I did want to point out that, let's take a look here at our library manager. I just wanted to point out that when it gets imported, it does take all the textures that we're looking at here. So like this wood siding and this stone, it takes all of these textures. It doesn't create new textures within or new surfaces within Archicad here, which is great actually, because that would kind of, you know, junk up all the attributes from our, you know, in our surface settings. But what it does do is it takes those textures and it adds that into our embedded library. So I just want to point out where this is coming from here. You can see that I have several different versions here of the textures, and you can actually see if we zoom in here, we can probably find somewhere down here that texture for the siding. If you right click on it, you can go into the info here and you can see and kind of inspect the texture that we're bringing in as part of that import process into Archicad here. So if you wanted to take one of the textures and assign it to one of your surfaces within your project just to match it up, then this would be one way of doing so. You just go into your surface settings and browse within your embedded library to access those textures. So this last one here we can see is for the greenhouse. We can see that it is just kind of one texture, I guess, for that clear surface they had as part of the glass. So, okay, so that is kind of the basics here of bringing in SketchUp objects. The next step that I want to talk about here, and actually let me just pause for a second. Let's see if there's any questions on this so far. I know the questions are going to be just a little bit delayed from what I'm actually speaking to here, but let's see. Yeah, feel free to just, you know, add any questions into the chat box, and we can come back to those here in just a few minutes. So, all right, let's kind of talk about the next step here in the workflow. So we've already kind of established that working with SketchUp objects like this in a 2D view really is kind of a pain to do, because for one, we only have limited access to what we see on the screen. Number two is it's very slow to work with here. So like if I tried to start modeling walls over the SketchUp model, it would really slow down my computer and I wouldn't be able to efficiently work with that. So, so to work around those limitations, we have some steps that we can take to actually generate a floor plan of a cut. And so the way that we do this is by creating 3D documents that are cropped or with cut planes from the top and the bottom. So let's actually jump over here to a 3D document for our level 1. and let's just see what we get here. So, okay, so this, once again, I can feel like I'm trying to pan right now, and this is still very, very slow to work with. So if I tried to bring this into a trace and reference, once again, my computer would definitely slow down a lot, and it would be quite frustrating. But what is great about this view is we can cut right into the SketchUp object and see what's going on here. So let's talk a little bit about how we set this view up. So what we'll do is we'll actually open the source view from this saved view of the 3D document here. And you can actually see that all of a sudden my computer is much faster. I can kind of pan around, and you can see as we zoom in, we can actually see the textures here and all the details. And that is because this is actually a 3D view, of course. So the process here is we add cut planes on the top and the bottom. You can't see the cut planes right now, even if we zoom all the way out. But if we turn them off and we turn them back on, then you will be able to see where those cut planes are coming from. Because this object is so large, that the SketchUp project file is so large, you can see the extents are way out there. But as we come in here, you can see that we can just kind of hover out here because we're looking at it from the top. We can grab that cut plane and we can pull it up and down. You can see that when we push it down, it's going to be cutting those walls. We pull it up, it's kind of limited here until you let go, and then you have to move your screen, and then it'll refresh, and then you can take that and you can pull it all the way up and all the way down. So that's kind of the key here, is that we want to get a section here that's good enough to show us where all of our openings are, and really will capture the context of our floor plan. And something right about there is, pretty good. So we can hit finalize on this, and you can see that it added the cut line there. And in order to save this in a view so that we can create a nice floor plan, we can actually just go down here, down at the bottom. I have this look perpendicular to click surface, and we can try to click in there. And okay, so of course that's going to be a view of the bottom when I'm trying to do this on the fly. Let's try this again by zooming in a little closer. So it's still going to the bottom. So in this case, let's try to get a top view by jumping into our projection settings. So top view. Okay, that's much better. And okay, so from here we can of course generate a 3D document. So that's actually back here on our in our project map. And so you can see I've generated a number of different 3D documents for these SketchUp cuts. So we have our level 1 SketchUp cut, which we already had looked at. We have a level 2. Let's open this one, because this is what's one of the nice things with these 3D documents is we have a lot of different settings here to take a look at, and to change the style of this particular view. You can actually notice on our second floor that we have our shadows turned on this 3D document, and so we're getting kind of a nice shaded view of our cut running through the model. Our level 3 here is actually set up for our roof in this case. And so we can see that generate. So there's our level 3. Let's go down to like our basement level though, and just take a look at that. And you'll notice we already have that our greenhouse in this SketchUp view. So, yeah, what's great about this is we don't have to really go in and update any of these views, and they'll automatically populate when we either update and swap out a new version of our model, or when we want to add additional SketchUp objects here as well. Now with this one, I'm actually going to make sure I have that set to the right layer so that it only shows when I want it to, and so that's how we can cut through and see that greenhouse. If we go to actually a foundation cut, we can probably see inside of that greenhouse we can see at least the perimeter of it there. So that may be one where we can go in, adjust our cut planes on the top and bottom, and then we can kind of set that exactly where we want to see more detail on that. So, okay, so from these 3D document views, let's go back to our level 1 to kind of follow that workflow all the way through. So the next step beyond here is you can actually notice that in this case, we have a this kind of blue bounding box. This is actually a worksheet. So this is a really great way of using a worksheet here in this case. I'm actually going to take this worksheet, let's see, and we can kind of push it over a little bit, take our tag and pull that out. And so the great thing with worksheets is it's going to take whatever's in our view here. So again, this is a 3D document, and we can generate a new faster view of that 3D document. So the process here is we're just taking views of the model, we're turning that into a 3D document so that it essentially becomes, you know, vectorized and line work, and then we can create a worksheet view of this, and then whenever we want to go in and update it so we can rebuild from the source view here, we will see this go through and update. So so that's kind of the next step here. This step does take just a little while, so we can kind of watch as this goes, and let's go check out any questions. So all right, I see that there is, let's see, Wannabe had an obvious question. What are the PC specs? So right now I'm running on a Lenovo laptop. This is, what is it, a P50, I think. I do have the Xeon mobile processor, so it does definitely have kind of you know, upper end specs. Let's see. I do have 64 gigs of RAM, so but you can see that we're not really even close to tapping that out right now. But yeah, that's the graphics card, or sorry, the processor, and yeah, I think we got a 4 gigabyte NVIDIA Quadro card in here. Okay, so that answers the PC specs. Let's see. Arath Lara asks, is there any way to import newer SketchUp files, SketchUp versions newer than 2019? So currently, if you try to bring in a 2020, it will say that it's not compatible and you need to have it as a 2019. But from SketchUp, you can always save back to a 2019. So that's what I've had to do in some cases on this particular project because it was the latest version of SketchUp. So you just open up the model and then save it back to a 2019 version, and then you can bring that in. So I don't think you really lose anything by doing so. Let's see. Lucas Kramer asked, is there a way to import a SketchUp model with all the original SketchUp layers? So I don't believe there is a way to bring in those layers and have them accessible. When we do import these objects, it does take it and kind of you know, make it one single object. It's not like bringing in a DWG, but yeah, so that I think there is a limitation on just that import process. That would be nice if they did have the ability to control the different layers within the object, but because it's being converted to a GDL object, it kind of compresses everything into one. Let's see. Nelson has a question. Try save the file to lower version. Oh yeah, that's kind of an answer for the previous question. Yeah, 2019 is the latest version that we can bring in, and yeah, pretty straightforward to how to save that back. If you're receiving this from someone else, the SketchUp model, then you can always ask them to save it back to 2019 version. It only takes a minute. So, okay, let's continue on here. So you can see that in the background, we adjusted kind of the extents or the perimeter of our worksheet here, and we actually pushed this out so we have a little bit larger border here, and everything is updated. I can see that right now it's much faster. I can zoom all the way in here on these details, zoom in and out, and it's very fast and easy to work with. We can actually go in here, and if we wanted to clean up some of this, we could go in and like select some of these high poly or not polygons, but these are lines and fills. We can see we have 9,000 lines and fills within just this one table. We can always go in and work with this and just kind of clear some of this stuff out if we wanted to lighten this up even further. You can see it kind of leaves a little shadow there. So there's a lot of options here for going in and cleaning up these views. But yeah, what's great about this though now is when we are working on just like one of our floor plan views here, let's just go to like, I don't know, ground floor construction view. And we can see that this is going to populate the Archicad model. But at any point in time, we can go back and grab our level 1 worksheet and show this as a trace and reference. And this is pretty nice and snappy. I can zoom in and out. I can see all the different details, and it's fast to work with. So if I tried to turn on like the level 1 3D document as a trace reference here, you'll be able to see just how much slower that is. It's still, yeah, I guess it did turn over. I'm trying to pan right now, and it's not even moving my screen here. So it's definitely slowed Archicad down to the point where you can barely even pan around and move within the model. So that's really the whole purpose here of setting up these worksheets, so that it's fast, it's lightweight, and we can really reference these into any of our working floor plans. And all this is, once you set this up with this 3D document to the worksheet workflow, then whenever you want to update this, it's just a matter of switching out the SketchUp model. So it's pretty straightforward and easy to do. We can trace this all the way through, even onto our layouts here. So let's just pull up our layout, and we should see here, I think it's updating real quick. You can see that it'll go through and it's regenerated that view. The last version I think had gone through and cleared out all those fills. But yeah, now it's gone through, and now we can produce floor plans of our SketchUp model by running it through here into Archicad. So, okay, so let's go back. There's a few more questions. Lucas asked, how did you manage to do that? Oh, let's see. I see Francois. I managed to import SketchUp geometry by layers. So, yeah, Francois, you got to show us, or Fusion BIM, you got to show us how to import that. So perhaps you're exporting SketchUp by layers and then importing those individually. Yeah, we're gonna have to learn how you are doing that. For this particular case, working with this project file, yes, definitely having a single model here makes it quite easy to work with. So instead of having to import separate SketchUp models that may, for different layers, as long as you can get the cut that you need for the view, then it works pretty well. So yeah, we'll have to see the response from Fusion BIM on how to import those by layers, or whether it was just exporting by layers and then importing individual. Let's see. Izoit, is there a way to change SketchUp geometry to basic Archicad objects, walls, slab, etc.? So there, besides modeling over the geometry with walls and slabs, I don't believe there's a way to convert it to those design tools. The only option that we have for converting objects is going to be converting it to a morph. So if you do need to make some adjustments to the geometry of the object itself, you can convert the objects to morphs. And we can take a look at that in this case. Let's go back to like our SketchUp view. We can see we have our greenhouse down here. Again, my computer is slowed up just by loading up this view. But yeah, we could take this and we can right click on this and convert selection to morph. So we can do that. Then I'm hitting F5 here so that we can see that in our view. I'm going to turn off our cut planes. So yeah, there's our object. And so this is currently a single morph. We could go in and let's see, I'm going to hit Control Shift G to ungroup these. And so we could go in and we could break these down into individual pieces, I believe. Actually, it's just one solid morph right now. Actually, I can see that the skylight in here, or the vent, is its own morph. So there may be some ways to explode this further, maybe not. But yeah, that is the way to take a SketchUp object and adjust it. Let's see. Fusion BIM says, "Hi Lucas, it's not ideal, but it works. You'll need to work in SketchUp and save the geometry as separate model. But this did help me get control of some workflows." So, okay, so yeah, that's kind of what we anticipated with it being separate layers, exporting to separate models, which, certainly there's some cases where that would be ideal and would help to kind of control what you see in Archicad. So, all right, so let's kind of continue on here. I really covered pretty much the major points here that I wanted to cover. So yeah, if you have any other questions on this, then we can dive into those. But yeah, just to show kind of how this works in practice, really from any of our modeling views here, let's just go to like a section here. Let's go to a building section, cutting through the project. So this is a view of, obviously from Archicad. So these are all Archicad objects. But at any point, if we wanted to turn on either as a reference or just to turn on the object itself, there's a few different options here. We can either go in and we can turn on the single SketchUp object, so temporarily. So we can turn this on and we can see this here now as a reference. So that would be one way. We can grab this, and I always like working with the quick layers here. So we're just going to hide that temporarily. We could always bring it back once you kind of have it turned on, just by undoing or redoing. So that would be one way of showing the SketchUp object. The other way would be to actually go here into our SketchUp sections, where again, these are just views that have that single object modeling turned on, and we can show as a trace reference here as well. And so that way, if we wanted to kind of fade one out and compare them through this manner, that's how we could do that. So, so yeah, that's obviously a sectional view. We could certainly look at the model in elevations as well. But yeah, really the big, point of this workflow here is to be able to have it on our floor plan. So whenever we're working on a floor plan, if we want to be able to reference in, let's jump to a second floor here, just as a different example. Whenever we want to be able to reference in the SketchUp model, we've now set this up where we can just turn on our level 2 as a reference. And again, we can just compare the two right through our working floor plan. So, so yeah, that is the workflow here. What else did I miss? Is there anything else I wanted to cover here? We've talked about the layers. We talked about renovations. We could talk a little bit more about the 3D document views. So let's actually open up the 3D document here. Let's go to like our level 2 as a sample here. And within our 3D document settings here, we can always go in and make adjustments here as well. So right now you can see our uncut elements. This is set to our surface color shaded. So if we go to a non-shaded view here, we can turn our shadow off. This is going to give us kind of like a much cleaner look of the model, which is fine. That would lighten up our worksheets quite a bit, because that would get rid of a lot of those different fills there. We can go back into the 3D documents and let's see, we can add those back. We can turn on our shadow. We can have shadow contours. For some of these views, it's definitely worth considering how detailed the model is, whether you want to turn on the shadows or not. I like it for views like on like a roof. It definitely gives you a much kind of like nicer shaded view versus having this turned on just as like the non-shaded view. It's a little bit tougher to see there. You can actually see that for whatever reason, we have a different type of shadow applied here. So we can see rounded tiles. So we could take this, make it, transparent background, turn it onto a shadow layer and kind of clean those up. So that would be another type of view that we can get from this. But yeah, those are our different 3D document settings. So once again, from here, we have changed this view a little bit. If we wanted to update our top view here, then we simply go in, rebuild from source view. So that one was very, very fast compared to our level 1. So once again, if we wanted to go in and say we wanted the shadows there, we can just adjust that view and we can rebuild from source view. Well, sometimes you have to regenerate these. Rebuild from source view, and yeah, those will update just like that. So okay, let's see if there's any other questions here. Yeah, if you have any, then definitely add it back into the chat here. Fusion Bim says, John, what was the purpose use case for working these detailed SketchUp models? So that is a great question. In this particular case, really the designer of the project, SketchUp was their tool of preference. So that's what they were used to working in. But SketchUp obviously has some limitations, or really a lot of limitations compared to Archicad. So the whole purpose of working with these SketchUp models was to take the SketchUp object and bring it into Archicad so that we could then go through and develop a detailed model of the project that's built in Archicad with Archicad based elements here. So you can see we can switch over the view here from SketchUp to our Archicad model. And so, yeah, this is still a work in progress, but you can see that yeah, these are Archicad objects. These are Archicad walls and windows and doors. And yeah, for documenting in Archicad, having it drawn this way just makes it quite a bit easier, so that you can go in and really kind of dial in some of the different settings here for in working up a documentation set. So so yeah, that's really the whole purpose here, was to bring in SketchUp as a reference and then continue to build out the project and documentation within Archicad. So great question. Thanks for asking that. So, okay, well, if you have any other questions on this, then definitely shoot it into the chat right now. We'll hang on for just another minute or two here before we wrap this up. So definitely appreciate everyone for checking out this live stream. Hopefully this is a workflow that you can use on your own. If certainly if you're working with SketchUp models, having this set up with these predefined views for kind of slicing things up based off, with cutting planes for your different stories. If for setting up these worksheets, you can really kind of automate the process for turning these, the SketchUp object into something that you can go through and really document. So, if we wanted to go in and say, document basement walls here, we could go through and, dimension this. You cannot do this in a floor plan of a SketchUp object because you don't have any snap points with the object itself. But through this workflow, we can turn the SketchUp object into something that we can go through and dimension. And yeah, it can, it really makes the workflow much easier. And of course, it makes it much more efficient because, it doesn't slow down your computer. You can go in and you can model and make all these adjustments through this as a trace reference, and makes it much faster and less bogging down of your computer. So let's see, we got Mario from Rio de Janeiro who says hello. Thanks, Mario, for joining us. JE asks, how did you model the site in Archicad? So yeah, that is definitely a, a separate subject, but happy to talk about that. So this is a mesh. In order to build this mesh, we did reference in, let's see, on another worksheet here. Let's see, my site survey plan. So we have, PDFs as well as DWGs of this. So one of the things that we did here is go through, and I like having a lot of control over the polylines that we use to create the topo with, so that you can really control how many polygons you get on the surface of the mesh. So I like kind of going in manually and doing this. There's cases where I won't want every single topo line here, and I only want the majors, as you can see, like, through some of these points. I'm trying to select that. Come on. So you can see that we only have majors in this area, but up closer to the project site, you can see that we have, every topo line added in, and all of that drawn really manually. It took about probably an hour to go through and to trace out all of these. But then once you add those in, you can go in and you can create the mesh, with the magic wand tool to elevate those to the specific level. So that really gives you a lot of control over the poly count and the weight of that mesh. There's other ways of generating the mesh. You can do it from a 3D DWG, which we had in this case, but that actually only gives you the 3D line work and doesn't create the mesh. But there are some other ways of taking the GDL script and grabbing all the point lists and then using the import TXT file to generate the mesh, but that creates just a million polygons. So that's one of the downsides of doing it that way. Maybe a little faster to create, but you end up with something super heavy. So, okay, Camille is on. Thanks, Camille, for joining us. Yeah, definitely watch the rest later. Let's see. Izoid said, I will reverse my question before. Archicad should support option to make basic objects from morphs. What would be, that would be really helpful sometimes. Yeah, you can. Yeah, Archicad should support option to make basic objects from morphs. Well, yeah, you certainly can make objects from morphs just through the process of, kind of the typical, model with a morph, save it as an object, and then, from there you have an object. So, okay. Yeah. Hamdani says, thank you, Mr. John. I am from Indonesia. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Mario says, we thank you for all you have done, helping improve our skills with Archicad. Well, thank you. And I hope that this will really help you approach SketchUp in a little different, through a different light next time you need to go and bring in an entire SketchUp model into a project and be able to cut floor plans of it. Nelson says, thanks for the stream. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And okay, so if there's any other questions, then feel free to type those in. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Fusion BIM. Celia has a good question above about surface attributes. Let me see, where did that? Okay, so Celia says, what's the best way to handle surface attributes coming from SketchUp? So we did touch on this a little bit earlier with let's go back to our SketchUp object here. So when you bring it in, these surfaces are automatically created from your SketchUp import. So you can see as we kind of navigate around here real quick that, yeah, these are the textures that automatically get brought in when you import a SketchUp object. So we have quite a few here, down to, the little furnishings. And the way that this gets brought in is in our library manager. This is the best place to kind of view this, is whenever you import a SketchUp model, it creates these folders here with your different textures. So here under like our texture 2, you can see that we have all these different textures that were brought in from our SketchUp. So this is how it brings these in. It does not create new textures or new surfaces within Archicad, but these are all here and available if you do want to take any of these and I'm not sure what that is, and work with them within Archicad. So if you want to take any of these like, nice wood textures and apply it to like a wood flooring or furnishing, then you can, take those and map them through into your own surfaces. So like for this case here, for like the siding wood dark, let's just talk about that real quick. We'll just create a copy of this. So that's a copy. We can browse, we can go in, and we can find here within our embedded library, textures 2. I'm going to have to click through a bunch of these to find that one. That's one of the things that it does not bring in is the name of it. But I think I'm getting close. Let's see. There we go. That's probably the texture for the siding. So we can use that. And you can see that it's now created this. I would need to go in and kind of get the right spacing here. But that's one way that we can bring those through and add those into our project file here. So if we wanted to apply that, I can switch back over to, let's just show our design layers here. I can switch this back over. I can grab this wall. I could either override it in the material, or in this particular case, so you can go in and, that's actually a graphic, or that's a, a complex profile. Let's see, we can go in, we can find, where is it? There's our copy. So we can switch this over, and so that brought in the texture actually from SketchUp. Obviously, there was a little work that we needed to do there by rotating this back, or we had a rotation of 90 degrees on the other one, so this would rotate it back so that it's vertical. And so that's how we can bring in textures through SketchUp. So, yeah, that hopefully answers your question. And okay, so Celie says, yes, but if you need to update Archicad version, could be a mess. Yeah, it's probably something that you want to manage and kind of, what is nice about this, bringing it into the library manager, is it is a little bit easier to manage in this format. You could always export this out and, import it back in. But yeah, definitely something to pay attention to. If you wanted to kind of archive any of these textures so that on, like the next project, you could have them available, then, certainly there's ways of doing that as well. But for the most part, probably better not to reference the textures from the SketchUp file. Let's see. Lucas says, John, I make designs with bamboo and SketchUp. I want to import the bamboo structures into Archicad, like Archicad columns and Archicad beams. How do I do that? Well, yeah, there really isn't a way to have it automatically generate columns and beams. You'd have to model over it in this case. So sorry, there's no shortcut there. You could explode it into a morph, but then it still wouldn't be columns and beams. So yeah, that's one of those limitations of working with SketchUp. But yeah, it's just something that we have to deal with. So yeah, sorry, I wish there was an easy button to do that, but unfortunately there is not. So let's see, Ricky had a comment, the surfaces you see are hard coded into the objects upon import. So yeah, that's, probably a great comment to kind of describe what's happening in the background with the SketchUp objects is, the object itself is, referenced to the surfaces that it creates from those texture folders, which contain all the bitmaps, the images themselves. So okay, I think my voice is starting to run out here, so it's been a little while since I've done a live stream, so we'll wrap this one up here. But thank you for everyone who was able to sign on today. Thank you for helping us reach that 10,000 subscriber mark. And if you haven't subscribed already, then help us get to the 20K mark. And appreciate you guys signing on. Let's see, one last question here. JE asked, does SketchUp export to IFC? Yeah, I believe it does. The objects that you bring in. Actually, I think that your question is probably from SketchUp. Does that export to IFC. I'm actually not sure on that. It's been a while since I played with that. But yeah, thank you for everyone who joined. I see Michelle joined us today. Yeah, Ricky, thanks for making it here. Thanks, Swiss Education Information International. Fusion BIM, thanks for joining and contributing to the conversation. Thanks, Lucas. And yeah, thanks everybody. So we're going to sign off here. This replay will be available on the ContraBIM YouTube channel here shortly. And yeah, we'll definitely be back doing much more Archicad related content here soon. For those of you here in the US celebrating Thanksgiving tomorrow, I hope you have a safe and a wonderful holiday. And yeah, we will catch you very soon. So thank you, everyone. And I'm going to sign off here, and we'll catch you on the next one.